Afternoon, everybody. Today I want to talk about something good that happened to me very recently, last weekend in fact. August is, for me, August is the cruelest month. Anyone who knows me knows that when August gets here, my brain switches to Dragon Con mode. And I want nothing more than just hurry up, and get over with August so that we can get to Labor Day weekend and we can get to one of my favorite times of the year, Dragon Con. For those of you who don't know, Dragon Con is a massive 4-day celebration of all things geeky that takes place in downtown Atlanta. And every year, once August gets here, my brain goes into Dragon Con mode and I start looking around for as many things as I can find to make that time between me and Dragon Con go by faster. Well, as I was scrolling Facebook, I happened upon a note about a smaller convention also held in Atlanta called Monsterama. This is a convention devoted primarily to classic horror, although some science fiction and fantasy does get in there. Well, it's called Monsterama. You gotta expect that a con with that name is gonna focus pretty heavily on the monstrous side of things. Well, I knew about Monsterama, but I'd never been inclined to go until I looked at this year's schedule, and I saw that among the guests was Mary Badham, who played Scout in the 1962 film To Kill a Mockingbird. That has been my favorite film, or at least in my top 10 favorite films, ever since I first saw it when I was 11. I have loved that film, and of course, the book that it's drawn from for years, decades. And so if I was going to get an opportunity to actually see Mary Badham in person, I wanted to take it. Another draw was that the theme for the year was a Serling celebration. So it was going to be devoted to the various works of Rod Serling. And as I'm a huge fan of the Twilight Zone, the classic Twilight Zone from the 1960s, I said, I'm going to enjoy going to some of these panels, discussing this with other people who love it. And finally, the icing on the proverbial cake was when I took a look at the detailed schedule and I saw that Friday night was going to have there was going to be a panel on producer Val Lewton, who in the 1940s was the unacknowledged king of the horror film genre. And he has made a number of my very favorite horror films ever. So I thought of myself, I imagined myself in a room full of people, all of us talking about our favorite Val Lewton films, and I thought to myself, I really ought to go to this. So I got my membership, reserved my hotel room, and drove down there on Friday, August 8th to settle in and begin my small convention journey. So Monsterama, of course, is very different from Dragon Con. Dragon Con is massive. Monsterama, I would call it a cozy convention. Yes, there are a good number of people there, and it does attract some very prestigious guests. But you actually, as you're moving around Monsterama, it's only in this one small section of one hotel, whereas Dragon Con is spread across 4 hotels. And so as you're moving through your convention experience, you tend to see a lot of the same people in a lot of the same panels, and you develop a kind of community in those 3 days. You start to see these familiar faces. You feel like you get to know them because you're sharing all kinds of neat things and cool stories about the things that you love. So, Monsterama. 3 things that I particularly loved about it. First of all, of course, were the panels. I am a discussion panel gal when it comes to conventions. That, to me, is the big draw of conventions. Being in a room full of people discussing something that we all have a passion for. That's where that spirit of community comes from. Even at a massive convention like Dragon Con, you can feel it. But in a more cozy convention like Monsterama, you really feel it. That feeling is turned up to 11. So we got to discuss Val Luton. We got to discuss our favorite Twilight Zone episodes, our favorite Night Gallery episodes, and basically geek out about our favorite scary things. So that's the first thing, but that's something that I do at Dragon Con as well. What I got to do at Monsterama that I actually avoid at Dragon Con is the second thing that I really loved about it, the Walk of Fame. When it comes to Dragon Con, I avoid the Walk of Fame. In fact, nearly all the stories that I hear about the bad things that happen at Dragon Con or about people being disappointed by Dragon Con or having an awful time at Dragon Con, it feels like 90% of those stories involve something that happened or didn't happen at the Walk of Fame. People go there, they want their autographs, and then there's a snafu, as very often happens, particularly when you've got an organization that big. And the whole principle behind the Walk of Fame, because, again, there's so many people they have to manage, is get in, get your autographs, get out. You see the person, you're face to face with the person for a few seconds, and then you move on. They won't have a clue who you are. They will not remember what you looked like. Well, in this cozy monster-related convention, the Walk of Fame is very different. And I came away feeling that I got to know, at least a little bit, some very impressive people. Not only Mary Badham, but Diane Baker was also there. She has a long filmography, including many classic films like The Diary of Anne Frank and Journey to the Center of the Earth. A lot of television episodes. She's been in Night Gallery, and she was the senator in Silence of the Lambs, whose daughter was kidnapped. Just an amazing lady, very kind, very generous, and really liked. That's one thing she and the other guests had in common. They like questions. They don't get annoyed by questions. They're flattered by questions. They really enjoy the attention. They appreciate the fact that their fans love the stuff that they have done. And then we also got to know, got to know Rod Serling's daughter, Anne. Just a lovely person, very classy, very smart, and was very comfortable sharing and very generous sharing a lot of stories of what it was like growing up as her father, Rod, was involved with all these television projects and trying to make his mark and make a difference as a writer. And then there was Victoria Price. I hate to play favorites, but I really, really did love Victoria Price. I came away just appreciating how kind and intelligent and literate and impressive this woman is, and of course how her father, Vincent Price, was all those same things. I felt like I got to know him a little bit better and loved him more going out than I did coming in, if that were possible. I felt the same way about Rod Serling. Now, Victoria Price brought her dog with her, a little white mutt named Allie. It has been my experience that you can tell something about a person's personality, about their character, by how their pets behave. And Allie was the sweetest little dog you could ever hope to pet. And Victoria Price encouraged people, had no problem with people coming up to her, petting her dog, getting friendly with the dog. A generous, kind woman. So that's another thing that I really did love about Monsterama. As always, when I go to a convention, I don't leave with quite as many possessions as I go in with. I end up leaving with more possessions than I go in with. And this time I loaded up on nonfiction books, just to show you a few that I picked up during Monsterama. This is Boris Karloff, The Man Remembered. I've already started reading this one, since Boris is one of my favorite actors. 2 more books. The Death and Life of Edgar Allan Poe. Let's see. Mystery of Mysteries. The Death and Life of Edgar Allan Poe. Everything I needed to know. Everything I need to know I learned from The Twilight Zone. As I Knew Him, my dad, Rod Serling. This is Anne Serling's biography. By the way, all these were signed by their authors. So, again, authors, celebrities, very, very generous, very kind, and you feel like you're not wasting their time. You feel like they actually like you and appreciate your attention. Vincent Price, A Daughter's Biography. My folks actually have a copy of this, but now my husband and I, we have our own copy signed by the author. Also, sorry, it's tumbling into my lap here. The 5 Themes of the Twilight Zone by Arlen Schumer. This is also signed. So, lots of reading material. That's one of the things I enjoy about the conventions that I go to. I always come away with plenty of stuff to read. And again, this time my attention was on nonfiction. So that is my Monsterama experience. Had a great time over the 3 days I was there. Wasn't bored a single instant. Didn't feel like there was any dead space that needed to be filled. Every moment I was there had something interesting going on. So I want to thank the people who run the con, and I will just leave it by saying, I will see you next year. Thank you.